Hi guys and welcome to Carflix. Today I've gone and bought myself another Peugeot RCZ. This one I got for an absolute bargain. It needs a little bit of work, but let me show you around the car and let me show you what we're going to do to it to get it in tip-top condition. So here she is. She's a 2010 Peugeot RCZ Hdi in GT spec. She's got these black wheels that I don't really like. It's got a short MOT. She's only done 76,000, but she just needs a good clean. So let's go through the faults that we need to sort on this car. So the third brake light needs changing, the headlights need restoring, the wing mirror needs adjusting, all the alloys are curbed, so we're going to change those out. The arches need doing, the windscreen wipers need repainting, the front and rear brakes are completely knackered, and she needs a full service. So typically my SD card decided it was going to corrupt, which means I can't show you changing the front, rear discs and pads out, I can't show you me servicing the car, and I can't show you me changing the third brake lights out. And the most annoying part is I can't show you me fitting the new wheel. Anyway, let's get back to the video the next day when the camera did start to work again. So previously I put brand new brakes on this car, I gave it a full service and I expected it to fly through the MOT. Now, I couldn't believe on the amount of things it failed on. Bearing in mind that this car had only done 6,000 miles since its last MOT, so we're going to have a look at these so-called MOT failures and see if they really are genuine MOT failures or if I've just been scammed. Before we begin, let me show you on screen now what the car failed on. So as you can see, the last MOT was 6,000 miles ago and it passed without any advisories. So let's see what my car has all of a sudden failed on. Near side front inner road wheel fractured. That was because the wheels I bought had a crack in. I didn't know about that. That's getting sorted. The next two are because some plonker fit the headlight bulbs upside down. The next one, I'll be honest, was the drop link boot, which was hidden behind the hub, so I couldn't really see it. Another thing was the coil spring had broken, which was right at the bottom behind some rubber, so again I couldn't see it. Now the next two, the lower arms, I thought the guy was a bit harsh with this. They are a little bit corroded, but there's no playing those at all. Now the fuel leak was caused by me and my car lift falling off and sliding and squashing the diesel cooler. I did replace it with a new one. It was just that the old pipes were stuck and I had to break them off and fit some rubber ones instead, but unfortunately they were still leaking a little bit. And finally, the emissions. I didn't know this, but the DPF seemed to be blowing black smoke and it wouldn't pass the emissions test at all, which is something that I just couldn't check myself. And another thing that I couldn't see was that the CV boot had also split. Now moving on to the advisories, as we all know, the Peugeot RCZ suffers with really weak jacking points, so one of the sides was crushed, so I'll have to sort that out. They also mentioned that the driver's side strut was corroded, which again I think is a little bit petty, as that'll just need cleaning up. Also, he wasn't happy with the zip tie holding the brake hose on, so I'll have to sort that. And finally, the rear coil spring was slightly corroded. Again, a bit petty in my opinion, given the age of the car, but let's get on with it and see which one of these are real. Now before we get the car jacked up, let me just show you, I was aware this had a slow puncher before I took it in for the MOT. They claim that there is a crack in this wheel, so let me get the car up on jack stands, and the first thing we're going to do is get this wheel off and inspect it. Right guys, so I've got the wheel off, and as you clearly can see, the MOT guys have actually put a mark and you can see the crack that's in this rim. So I will have to get that sorted. Luckily I have got a spare one of these wheels. It's black and I'll have to spray it, but it'll do for the MOT. So let's start taking the rest of the wheels off. Right guys, so this is the spare wheel that I've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean this. This has got a really good tyre on it. It's got a Bridgestone on it and it holds air. But obviously it's the wrong colour. So what we're going to do, we're going to clean it, then we're going to prime it, paint it and lacquer it. And then that'll obviously match the rest of the wheels on the car to get it through the MOT. So let's have a look at what they failed it on. Now the first thing it said was driver's side coil spring's broken. And I think it is, you know. Oh dear, yes. That's broken. The other thing they said is that the CV boot's leaking. Yes, that is leaking, so I'm going to replace that as well. It also said this clip is broken and held on by a zip tie, which it is, but I'm pretty sure I can fix that with a bolt, so that won't be an issue anymore. So this is obviously corroded, but I reckon we can clean this up and just spray that with a bit of spray paint, and that should be job a good one. They also said this was knackered. Now, personally, I think it looks worse than it is. I know he's put a nice arrow on there, but I reckon if I clean that up, I just think that's just corrosion. I don't think there'll be much play in that if I get the screwdriver out. I think that'll be all right. So I'm gonna have a go at cleaning that up, and I think it's the same at the other side too. So the next thing is this. It's called the outrigger, and somebody squashed it. This does happen on this model because they're not very well made, so it's just a case of just banging it back out really. That shouldn't be too hard to do. That's another easy fix. Right, the next one is apparently the rubber boot, but I can't actually see anything wrong with that. Maybe the boot is split. Oh no, it is there, yeah, I can feel it. Yeah, that's definitely split. You can see that, it's split. And again, they're saying that, but like I say, I think that'll just clean up. There's no excessive movement in it, so I'm just gonna clean it up. I think that should pass. The other thing is this needs tightening up because these are leaking slightly. As you can see, it's a little bit shiny on there after I squashed the original one, but I will, yeah, tighten these up and that shouldn't leak anymore. So this rear coil spring apparently is corroded and is an advisory. It is at the top, I guess, but I wouldn't say it's cracked or anything. So I'll probably just spray paint that, clean it up. It's another easy fix. And apparently the emissions fail. Well, I'm going to get a second opinion on that. But that's why I put bollocks. Right, so just show you what Eliana's doing. She's doing the old card trick, because we're going to spray this and primer it, colour it and lacquer it. So this little card trick's really cool. And we didn't have any cards, so what we've done is we've made his own cards. Start with an old cardboard box, and yeah, she's doing that now and get it all sprayed silver. Right, so we've sprayed it all with the lacquer. It's all finished. We're now going to take the cards out because the card trick works really, really well. And there you have it. Look at that. It was black and now it's not, and that will pass its MOT. It's time to crack on. I'm going to go for the hardest bit first, which is obviously changing the coil spring. I've already bought all the parts just in case, and I'm glad I did. So let's get cracking with changing that spring. So to get to the top mount, you've got to take off the windscreen wipers, which are two 16mm bolts, and then it's just a simple case of removing the rubber seal that runs across the bottom, removing two T28s, and then just removing the scuttle panel. I'm having a bit of trouble. I've got a 21, which is a really unusual size, but it just keeps slipping off because of this rubber part. This is just no good really. It's going to wreck this. So I'm going to start on the bottom of the strut now instead. This was originally held on with this zip tie and the bolt was snapped off. I've managed to get the bolt out, and now I found a bolt that fits perfectly. So when we come back to putting the strut on, that'll be sorted. Next, I'm going to take this ABS sensor off, which is really easy. And now I'm going to clean this up with some penetrating fluid. And then we're going to try and get this out now, because I've got a feeling this is going to be seized as well. So I've just cracked these nuts off now, so I'm just going to buzz them out. There we go. Well, I'm not going to take them completely out. Right, so that is out, guys. It's all out. Right, so I'm now gonna undo the caliper. Right, and now I'm just gonna pop this off. There we go. Now this should just slide off. Now we can put this out of the way somewhere. As you can see, this is the CV boot that's in question, and it's only zip tied on, and look at this. That's just literally just come straight off. So I'm going to cut this off with a Stanley blade. I'm going to show you what I'm going to use to repair this. So this is what I've bought. It's a split boot, and it allows you to put it on and you kind of glue it together without having to take the whole drive shaft off. So it saves a lot of time. So I'm going to go clean everything up and start fitting this. Right guys, so I've pulled the old CV boot off and it's knackered. Absolutely knackered. I just cut it off with some scissors. This is universal kit, which is a split one, and you basically glue it along here. The other thing I'm going to do different is cut this end section off here so it's the same size as that one. You get everything you need, so you get these clamps instead of the zip ties that were on there. And then I'm going to pack it with grease. Obviously you use this glue and it is super good stuff, this. You kind of hold it together as you go along. It's really cool. So yeah, I'm going to start putting this up and getting it to the right size. This is all stuck together, completely stable now. On second thoughts, I've probably made that a bit too wide at the back, but I'm sure when I clamp that up, that won't be an issue. It's going to be a case of packing this with grease, which came with it, which is this stuff. And then it's a case of just putting the clamps on, and then we should be good to go, and that should be done. The CV boot is on, and that looks not too bad at all. I did make it a little bit too big at the end, but I managed to double it back on itself, but it is not leaking grease anymore, which is the main thing. Right, so all this has been cleaned up. As you can see, that looks a lot better now than it did before. Everything's had a scrub down, degrease, and spray painted black, so it's no longer rusty like it was advising it was. We're now going to change out this anti-roll bar link here. This should just pull off. There we go, that's out of the way, and now I've got to undo this and then undo the one at the bottom as well. So these drop links are really easy to change. All you need is a 16mm spanner and a T30 socket, and as long as you lubricate them, they're fine. Just got the bottom one off, and now there we go guys, and that was the problem. Look, this had completely torn. So let's go and fit the new one. So that's the old one, this is a new one. They come with 2 new bolts, which is great. So I'm now going to fit this onto here. One drop link, all fitted. This side is done. So let me show you what I've been up to on the back. So this was an advisory. So what I've done is I've wire brushed it and coated it in paint, and it all looks nice and clean under there. I've also sorted the outrigger here, which was bent. That's done. And now I'm going to put the wheel back on this side because we are done. Right, so this is the wheel we've just sprayed. It isn't perfect by any means. It's a slightly different colour to the back wheel, but you know what, just for a quick fix before I get my replacement wheel from the guy who got these off, this will do perfect for now, just to get it through with the MOT. Right guys, so I managed to whiz it off with the impact gun. I wasn't expecting that. Now look, with a adjustable, I can now start to get this off. There we go. I'll leave it on the last few threads just so I can get the bottom out now. Right, I've strapped a bit of rope around here just so this doesn't flop and take this out. So I'm now going to hammer these out. That's one out. That's 2 out, people. Too bad. Hopefully this rope will... there we go. Now I can literally take this top nut off. And she is out. And there is the crack spring right at the bottom. So I'm now going to get this off with my spring compressors. So bearing in mind I've never done this, I'm kind of just winging it. So when doing this, because it is a little bit sketchy, just make sure the jaws are on properly and that you just keep going from left to right clamp so it's finely compressed so you can get it off. So maybe I just whiz it off on the end now with a long 21. Here it comes. Well, it didn't shoot off, which is a good thing. That's out. Oh, done it. With absolutely no experience. Great success.
A great success!
Right, I've just got to carefully unwind this now. That's one off. That's two off, guys. All done. Right, so this is the old one. It looks exactly the same to me, but I'm just going to go for it. So if you're ever thinking of doing this in the future, consider doing lowering springs because you don't actually have to compress these. But as I said before, just take your time, clamp it down, do it left to right really slowly until it's compressed enough to put back onto the strut. And there you have it, one perfectly aligned spring, which we're now going to put back in.
I know it breaks your heart. Moved to the city in a broke down car and 4 years no calls. Now I'm looking pretty in a hotel bar and I can't stop. No, I can't stop. So baby, pull me closer in the backseat of your Rover that I know you can't afford. Like that tattoo on your shoulder, has the sheets right off the corner of the mattress that you stole from your roommate back in Boulder. We ain't ever getting older.
Next it was onto the leaking fuel pipes that was connected to the fuel cooler. It's really easy to get off, just two 10mm bolts, and then I just tried to tighten them on the car, then just giving everything a really good clean with brake cleaner just to get all that diesel from on the chassis, so when it did go back for the MOT, so it wouldn't look like it was still leaking.
Left you, I was insane. Stay and play that Blink 180.
So next I gave under the cowling a really good vacuum because there was loads of spiders and leaves and cobwebs in there before refitting the cowling in reverse order, and then I got the wiper arms, fitted those back in line.
No, I can't stop. So baby, pull me closer in the backseat of your Rover that I know you can't afford. Like that tattoo on your shoulder, has a
After all the wheels were fitted, it was time to drop the car back off the axle stands, ready for a really good clean. Well, all the mechanical work was done last night. It started getting dark, but I've given her a really good clean now. I'm going to take you around the car and she is all done, ready for the MOT. So over to GM Autotech in Harleston. I wanted to get a local garage and a second opinion on some of the MOT failures that I thought were a bit harsh. But let's see what they say and let's see what their second opinion is. And it turns out a lot of these were actually true.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Which leads me to believe that when the car was purchased last, the car garage did a dodgy MOT on it, which is really unprofessional. Anyway, let's get into what it actually failed on. So, exhaust emissions. It was blowing black smoke and the emissions were failing. So the guys put me some cleaner in and also told me that the DPF looks knackered. Looks like I need one of those. The next four things are the headlamp bulbs. Now I thought this was because the adjuster inside was just set too low, but it turns out I do actually need to adjust the physical bulbs. Now the next one is related to the first one again, which is to do with the exhaust smoke. Again, that's to do with the DPF. And would you believe it, when they were testing the windscreen wipers, one actually fell off. But luckily I've got a spare set of those in the garage. Now moving on to the advisories. Now the first one is quite funny. The guys didn't realise that on the RCZ the airbag light's actually above the headlining. So they thought it was in the dash, couldn't see it and put that down. So they're going to take that one off for me. Now the next two are to do with the jacking points. I did pull the actual jacking points out, but where other people have been jacking it up, they've deformed the chassis. So I'm probably going to ask those to do that because I just don't have the tools to pull it out. Now the next one is the oil leak. I think this was when I did the service. I think a little bit spilled out. So I think I'm just going to clean that up. The next one was to do with the fuel pipes. I did tighten them up, but they still weren't happy with the repair. So I'm going to allow those guys to fix it when I bring the car back. Now the next one is the coil spring. I think I'm just going to change it out because it's pretty cheap and easy to do. And then the one after that is to do with the rear tyre, which wasn't spotted before. Apparently it's out of shape, so I'm going to whack a couple of new tyres on the back as well. Now the final one is to do with the bush and the condition of the bush. I can't feel any movement in it. I'm probably just going to clean it up. So let's get cracking with these repairs. So let's get the car back on axle stand so it's high enough so we can get underneath to the exhaust system to change that troublesome DPF. First thing we've got to do is remove all the 10mm bolts that are holding on the under tray. So this is the DPF which is in question. This is what's going to come out. There's a bolt just over there and there's a bolt just at the back there, which looks like a bit to get to. But I'm sure I'll be able to get to it somehow. There's two pipes to disconnect just here as well. So I'm gonna try and crack on and try and remove this thing. Also, apparently there's an oil leak somewhere. I can see a very slight leak here, but I wouldn't say that was, I would say that was more coolant. But what do I know? Anyway, I'll probably give all this a good clean under here. Right guys, so this is the new DPF. It's a beast of a thing. I've just been preparing it, getting some of the old pipes off, etc. The other thing I'm a bit worried about is getting to the bolt, because it's right up there, which means that you have to take the wheel off to be able to get to the bolt to undo the front one. So that's going to be a challenge. So I'm going to do that, probably off camera because you can't really see much, and then I'll start removing everything. So the first thing I'm doing here is just removing the CO2 sensor. Then it's onto the rear clamp, which unfortunately was seized solid, so I had to cut it off. Once that was cut off, I then got my big screwdriver in there and pried the old clamp out. Once that was loose, I could then start undoing the rubber DPF pipes. Once that was loose, I could use a really long extension and undo the clamp at the engine side of the DPF. Once that was free, I could then use some penetrating fluid and a long screwdriver to pry out the bushes of the DPF. What an absolute that was. So the one on the right is the old one, the one on the left is the new one, but that was really, really hard to do. But I'm going to carry on. All I had to do now was transfer over the DPF pressure pipes onto the new DPF. Once back under the car, it's just a case of refitting everything back in reverse, remembering just to be a little bit patient. Then back using a really long extension to tighten that final bolt up. Right guys, so moment of truth. Let's start her up and see if I've got any leaks. Let's go under the car and have a look. Right. No leaks. No leaks. Right, let's give her a bit of a rev and see if she gives any black smoke.
A great success!
Now the other thing I needed to do in here was, I don't think the headlight bulbs are set correctly because they failed the MOT. So I'm going to make sure that these are seated properly, because the high beam's here and the low beam's here. So I'm going to adjust both and make sure that they are securely in their holsters. So this is a really fiddly job, but you just got to be patient and just crack on with it. That was, someone had bent it across to the opposite prong and it wasn't in right at all. So I reseated it and hooked it back in place. So now I'm going to attempt to do this side. So again, patience is key with this one, especially this side, because the fuse box is in the way and you actually have to disconnect the top connector of the headlight to give yourself a little bit more access. You can see from this angle just how little space I've got working on that light bulb. Right, that's all the bulbs adjusted, so they should pass now. So that's another problem ticked off the list. The other one I wanted to do, I need to adjust this because obviously it's touching, look. These are quite easy, so I'm going to flip this off, move it up a little bit, and then that should be another problem fixed as well. So a really easy job again, you just pop the caps off and loosen the bolts, which are 16mm, and then adjust the wipers and then fit everything back again. Now that I was happy there was no exhaust leaks, I could now fit the world's largest under tray back to the car.
You are my bread and love, baby. You are my light in the dark. It's time to tell you, baby, it's time.
Moving on to fitting one of these, a new rear spring. It was one of the advisories on the back. So now I'm going to take the old spring out. So let me show you. I tried to undo the bottom of the damper, but the bolts are seized and I can't get it off. So I'm going to have to use my spring compressors, but I can't compress them enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the spring. That's the only thing I can do. And then what I'll do is I'll compress the spring with zip ties, pop it back in, and we should all be good. Right, well that worked. Got that out. Right, I've just found 2 16s and that's dropped the top of the strut out. So if you ever get any seized bolts on the bottom of the damper, just take them off, because they're not even inside the car on an RCZ, they're actually just bolted to the side just here. So now I should be able to pry and get that spring in. So on second thoughts of doing this, I should have really undone the other side as well, so I could pry it down, because I just couldn't pry the rear bar down enough to get the spring in. So what I did was a bit ingenious. I used my spin compressor in reverse, which then pushed the arm down and allowed me to put the new spring in. Right, well that worked. So now I'm just going to have to put a jack under here just to try and get these back in line again, and I'll jack this this wheel up and put these bolts back in now, and then yeah, that spring is all set and ready to go. So once I jacked the wheel up, I could then align the bolts for the top of the damper, and then that was all secure and done. Well, this is what working on a car looks like, and I'm covered in crap because obviously the DPF was really dirty, but it's all done. I'm now going to send it off for its MOT tomorrow, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll pass its time. So back to the guys at GM Auto Tech, where they did some of the work that I couldn't, and let's keep our fingers crossed that it actually passed. It did, with this time only one advisory. I am super happy that I got this car back on the road, and I'm super happy that I can now pass this on to the new owner. And talking about new owners, if you want to be the new owner of this car, I've listed it over on Auto Trader for $3,895. I feel it's worth that with the amount of effort I've put into it, and maybe you'll appreciate all the work I've put into this car as well. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the next one.